Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll find unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including my newest NYPD Laughing in the Line of Duty. I hope everyone's having a great week. Let's get to the pages of the crime section of the New York Post. Hypocritical anti-cop city council members plead for NYPD protection after receiving scary threats. A squad of anti-city council members are singing a different tune after getting death threats and now pleading with New York's finest to come to the rescue. Staffers from the cop-bashing politicians complained to community security staffers, whatever that means, about scary threats, and now are calling for the NYPD to protect them, according to sources. The NYPD should say, F you. These are the people that have systematically taken away the tools of the New York City Police Department to effectively enforce the law. It started with taking away or diminishing stop, question, and frisk. They second guess the NYPD's every move. These are the people defund the police. They get into these city council positions and they just make everything more difficult for the NYPD to do their job. So now that they've let the genie out of the bottle with all these crazies that are protesting down there, for whatever reason, I don't know why they're threatening city council members. I don't think it's right to threaten anybody, but for whatever reason, these city council members are catching some heat. So what do? They want the cops. It's amazing. The NYPD, we're a bunch of Nazis. We abuse people. We're not any good. But the second they feel a little bit of heat, they want the cops to come in and save them. I can absolutely guarantee you they will assign a team of NYPD guys to go with them places. There'll be an RMP, Radio Motor Patrol, a police car parked in front of their houses. I guarantee you, and it will go on forever. And then you know what's going to happen? These city council members will wind up liking the detective assigned to them, and then they'll get first grade. But we're going to get to that because that's kind of the theme of today's episode. So the second story of the New York Post, and this is another ironic one. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, lawyers claim sex abuse accuser is slow-walking evidence request. The woman accused Eric Adams of sexually assaulting her in 1993 in a lawsuit seeks at least $5 million, filed just before the deadline of the New York Adult Survivors Act. Now, I could be wrong. I might be wrong about this, and I'm sure an attorney is going to reach out and correct me. But I think this is the same law that was recently put on the books that erases the statute of limitations of an victim to sue her abuser for a crime. And I think what's funny is this might be the same law that E. Jane Carroll used to sue Donald Trump, because that happened a long time ago. Again, I might stand corrected on it, but I mean, this is from a long time ago, 1993, and she's suing him now. But, you know, if it happened, it happened. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but just a wild story. So, armed assault suspect shot dead by NYPD federal task force after flashing gun inside a store. A gun-wielding assault suspect was shot dead Tuesday by members of a joint NYPD federal task force inside a Manhattan eyeglass store after a violent struggle, police said. The suspect, identified as 25-year-old Devin Allen, was shot at least 3 times around 2:45 p.m. after he flashed a gun inside Maxine's Optical in Chelsea. Authorities were looking for him after he allegedly smacked a deli worker with a jelly jar during a fight on April 7th. He previously served time in an upstate New York prison for attempted murder between 2018 and 2020. So he got 2 years for shooting somebody. Well, this happened inside Maxine's Optical in Chelsea. It's a good thing the NYPD got him before he picked up his prescription, because he might have been a better shot. So good job by the NYPD and the federal task force. This one's a wild story. It happened down here in Florida. Potential serial killer accused of strangling 2 sex workers captured in Florida. Florida authorities captured a potential serial killer who allegedly strangled 2 sex workers, weren't they prostitutes at one time, on separate occasions, and then disposed of their bodies like trash. Carlos Yidel Baez Nieves, say that 3 times fast, allegedly murdered the 2 women in March and April. The 25-year-old suspect picked the women up in his truck on 2 different occasions, had sex with them before he carried out the slayings. There's more to the story. I think he's from Puerto Rico originally, and I think the police in Puerto Rico are looking into some things. So this guy's got problems. I don't think he's going to go anywhere anytime soon. And unluckily for him, the state of Florida does have the death penalty. So if he did it and if he's convicted, more than likely he'll be finding himself on death row. Now, this story is going to set the tone for this week's content. Longtime NYPD city detective leaves NYPD to join the Secret Service. Longtime NYPD, who served as a trusted advisor to the department's top cop, the police commissioner, is leaving the ranks to join the U.S. Secret Service, has learned. The senior communications advisor and detective first grade has served the NYPD and the people of the city of New York with distinction for more than 2 decades, Commissioner Eddie A. Caban said in a statement. He served as a trusted advisor to the department's top cop and is leaving the ranks to join the Secret Service, the Post has learned. So I saw this story, and my first reaction was, well, that's great. And then I said, well, wait a minute. He's a first grade detective, and he's working in One Police Plaza for the police commissioner. Okay. So then I started doing a little digging. And there's a website called nypdonline.org where you can pull up current or recently retired NYPD members, and it tells if they've had a disciplinary record, how many arrests they've made, the accreditations or courses they've taken. This is new to me. I mean, it wasn't around when I was around. So I found exactly what I expect. I'm not going to say the guy's name, but I found exactly what I expected. Now get this. In 23 years, this guy has amassed 20 arrests. 13 felonies and 17 misdemeanors in 20 years. That's like 1 point something arrest a year. Now, I could find more arrests standing in front of a Staten Island precinct than this guy could in 20 years. So on the website, you can also look up his training summary, like I said, which was also telling, because this guy must have signed up for anything that came around. And some of these courses were not around. Obviously, I'm a dinosaur. I retired 17, 18 years ago. But, I got to read some of these things because it's just funny. So one of the courses he took was responding to commercial robberies. Well, if you had done any street time, you would know how to respond to a commercial robbery. Then you have Highway District Advanced R&P Operation. That means how to drive a police car. And he took that in 2022, so obviously he was on the job for a while. Active bystandership for law enforcement. I'm not going to read them all because there's just too many, but a lot of them are funny. Mayor Executive Order 78 for vaccination testing and compliancy. Here's another course, Health and Wellness, In That Dark Place, An Officer's Journey. Again, whatever the hell that means. Equal opportunity employment training, sexual harassment, awareness and prevention. We didn't have these courses when I was there. Worldwide Pride, New York City 2019. I have no idea what that is. Now, this is a course. Coping with signs of anxiety and depression. We were not touchy-feely when I was with the NYPD, so I guess a lot has changed. Trauma, health and resiliency. Let's see. Ballistic vest replacement measurement. That's not really a course. That's probably just something for equipment. So all right, so maybe some of these things he had to take, but I mean, it looks like he signed up for quite a lot of things. So this is kind of what it sticks in my craw. As we stand here, when I'm talking about this, there are detectives in busy precincts doing God's work. They're solving homicides. They're getting their balls busted about Comstat. And here's this guy, the senior communication advisor, and he waltzes out the door with a detective's first grade pension. So he's promoted twice as a detective. And I don't know what he makes, but I can guess it's north of $150,000. And I bet you he probably got some overtime in there. So hats off to the Secret Service because they're getting themselves a fine man, well-rounded individual. So this brings me to this week's conversation about nepotism, favoritism, and how the NYPD works with these inside deals. And unfortunately, there are those that take the job to go into law enforcement, but I could speak about the New York City Police Department, that they really have no interest in police work. They don't. From the second they get in, they're looking to find that inside position where they can hide for cover, study for the next sergeant's exam, or like this guy wound up in lucky enough to get into the police commissioner's office, who obviously somebody there took a liking to him and just kept moving him up, and he got promoted so many times. So I'm going to share a few stories about guys like this that I rubbed elbows with along my career. And I know I'm going to sound sour grapes and stuff. I mean, listen, I got taken care of too, and I'm going to go into that. So this is probably around 2000, 2001. I'm dating this girl, and her mother liked to rib me all the time. And her niece, my girlfriend's cousin, was dating this NYPD cop. And all I heard, let's just say the guy's name was Frank. It's not, but let's just say his name is Frank. And all I heard was Frank this and Frank that. And, you know, it was one grandiose story after the other. So, like, I'm a detective in auto crime. I'm working in organized crime. I'm doing interesting work. And all I hear about is this guy, Frank. And I'm like, well, where does he work? No one could tell me where this guy worked. And I says, well, what's he doing? Oh, he was I heard one story. He was busting up a prostitution ring. Another story was he was involved deep undercover with narcotics. Now, in the NYPD, it didn't sound right because Vice handles Vice. This is before human trafficking was huge. But Vice handles Vice. Narcotics handled narcotics. Auto crime handled auto crime. Because if you started jumping over and didn't involve another thing, heads were going to roll. So the stories about this guy didn't make sense, and nobody could tell me where this guy worked. So one weekend, we went out to see her cousin's family, and there was a big barbecue. So we go out there, and, you know, I forgot about this guy. You know, just totally slipped my mind. So we're there barbecuing and having a couple of beers and stuff, and there's this guy standing off to the side, and he looks like he looked like he went into the Gap and bought everything new, like new belt, new pants, new Docksiders. And he's just telling one bullshit story after another. And he's talking about, you know, when you testify before the grand jury, if there's an undercover in the hallway, they yell, clear the halls, because they don't want witnesses to see the undercover. Now, that's true, but he's just going on and on about it, and it's just one bullshit story after another. So I kind of grab my beer, and I'm standing, he's talking about 3 or 4 civilians, and I'm just kind of sitting back, and I'm listening. And finally, you know, I wait for my time to talk to him, and I go, where do you work? He goes, excuse me? I go, are you on the job? Which any cop, NYPD cop, you say you're on the job, that means, are you an NYPD member? And he goes, oh, yeah. But now all of a sudden he starts stepping back, and I go, where do you work? And he names a Manhattan precinct, just a Manhattan precinct. And I go, so you're a precinct cop? And he goes, well, yeah. Now, listen, precinct cops, they do God's work. Those poor bastards drive in circles. They're handling 30 calls a night. Some guys like doing that. That's fine. That wasn't for me after a while. I wanted to get into more things. But all his stories had nothing to do with being a precinct cop. He sounded like he was in a joint federal task force from the stories he was telling. Now he's telling me he's a precinct cop. So I go, what do you do in the precinct? And I don't want to get too close to the target, but he worked in an inside position. And I said, so you're an inside guy? And he goes, well, yeah. I go, so what's with these stories and all these arrests? And then he starts humming. Now you don't want to talk anymore, right? Well, I find out that his supervisor is a guy that I know very well and I worked with, right? So now I start, so then like he's trying to buddy up with me, and he's like, yeah, I'm studying for the sergeant's exam. And I go, well, how much time do you have on the job? And he was an older guy, like he was in his like early 30s, but he only had came on the job late. And I says, well, how much time do you have on the job? He goes, 2. I go, you think you should be a supervisor with 2 years on the job and you're already inside? So he didn't want to play anymore. He got the hell away from me. So I called my buddy up. And my buddy's like, oh, what are you busted his balls for? You know, he gets my coffee and he does this and he does that. I go, yeah, but, you know, I mean, put him in the street. He goes, that's not his thing. So anyway, I forgot about this guy and never saw him again. Like I had another 7, 8 years to go on the job. And the NYPD, you'll never see somebody again. Never saw this guy again, right? So a couple of months ago, I'm retired. I'm living down here in Florida. And again, I don't want to get too close to the target. I'm making dinner. I got the news on in the next room. And I hear, we're going to speak to former NYPD. I don't even want to say his rank. They say his rank and they say the name. And I go, now that name sounds familiar, right? And I keep, you know, I'm chopping cilantro and I'm getting dinner. And then I hear the voice. And I look at the TV And I go, I can't believe this guy. And he's sitting there in a panel on a news station. And he's like, my NYPD sources tell me this. And and I'm like, can you believe this guy? Like, he's never done a day's work in his life. He's on the news, and I know the places he's worked, and it was nothing. There was no heavy lifting. And he's maneuvered himself into a position where, he's on call, wants to get a quote from the NYPD's perspective, even though this guy is retired and hasn't done anything in his career. They call him up and he goes on TV. So, yes, I am jealous. I'm the first to admit it. I'm a petty person. Hats off to him for, making a career out of nothing into something. But that brings me to another story. So, I'm in auto crime. I'm probably in my, 15th, 16th year. And we're in plainclothes. And we're actually in my neighborhood where I grew up, and we stop at this deli, and there's a place on Tremont Avenue, and it was one of these places where if you got there after 11:30, you were screwed because there was a line going. The place had great cold cuts, great hot food, all Italian specialties. So there was a line going out the door. So we got online. It was like me and like 3-4 other detectives. We get online, and we're in plainclothes. And now we're inside, but we're still probably about 8 people away from the counter guy, right? And there's this guy, he was from my neighborhood. He was like one of my brother's friends. He became a cop, and he worked in the borough. So he works in like an administrative position inside the borough of the Bronx borough. So he's in uniform, and he looks like he just came out of a box. Like, his uniform is spotless because all he does is just, do the mail run and stuff. He doesn't do anything. So he goes in, he walks online, and he sees me and 3 or 4 detectives, right? He goes, hey, how's it going? Blah, 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 blah. Now, I says, hey, how's it going? He's talking to me about my brother. I said, okay. I mean, I wasn't particularly close with this guy. And he says to me, you mind if I cut the line? And I said, yeah, I kind of do. I said, online you got Con Ed workers, construction workers, little old ladies. You know what I mean? Everybody knows, even though we're in plainclothes, we got police radios. I mean, we're cops. And now we're going to let this guy jump the line. And I go, no, not really. And he goes, well, they're getting really hungry at the borough. And I go, well, what does that mean? He goes, well, the inspector sent me to get his lunch. I says, well, don't worry. They're not going to run out of salami. Just get to the back of the line. He goes, well, I hate to pull rank here. I go, pull rank? I says, dude, I'm a detective. You're a cop. There's no rank pulling. Get to the back of the line, right? And he just kind of stood there. He was like taken back that I actually told him no. And then a construction worker goes, yeah, get to the back of the line. And then the whole line turned on him. Is like, yeah, asshole, get out of here. Go to the back. And he was in uniform. And he went to the back of the line. So some of these guys, man, they get these inside positions, and they're next to these masters of the universe. And the power trip really goes to their heads. Another place inside the NYPD that's a tit detail where nobody does anything is community affairs. That place has got more termites with the dead wood in there. You'll see them. So if you're watching the news and there's like there's a demonstration in the NYPD, you'll see these cops, and they're not in their full uniform, right? Like, you'll see the cops in their riot gear or something, or their jacket. These guys are usually wearing like royal powder blue jackets, or in the summertime, they're just wearing the police pants and like a royal blue polo shirt, and you never see them with a full gun belt. It's just like the 9mm strapped to their side, because God forbid they put the full rig on. That could hurt your back. And these guys got the greatest job in the world. What they basically do is kiss the community leaders' asses, and they fetch people's lunch. These are the guys in an NYPD precinct. When they go to leave the station house to grab their lunch, they throw on a windbreaker or a jacket, and they'll do this in August, and the reason they do that is, God forbid someone sees them and realizes they're a cop and flags them down to get involved in something. They don't want to get involved in it. So you'll see them in August putting on like a jacket or a windbreaker to go out so nobody knows they're a cop, because they're terrified of taking police action. So you want to know how people get promoted and moved up the ladder and stuff? I've seen my fair share of inspectors and chief's kids wind up in specialized units. And then what happens is they hang around like it's a party. They're entitled. And their supervisors can never do anything with them because their sergeants, lieutenants, even their commanding officer, they're outranked by their father or mother or aunt or whatever. They're terrified of them. So basically, they let them do what they want, because if they start putting their feet to the fire, hey, you got to do work, or hey, I don't want you doing this, All this kid's got to do is call daddy up, and that sergeant or lieutenant is going to get launched out of whatever specialized unit he's in and finds himself in Staten Island. Now, on the other side of the coin, I don't drop names on this show, but this person I really respect. On the other side of the coin, I've met a few bosses' kids that really threw themselves into the work. And one example is, her name is Martine Matarazzo. Her dad was Chief Matarazzo. But if you met her back then, you would have never have known it. She worked next door in Vice, and let me tell you, she worked her tail off. She was well respected for her work ethic, and now she's an NYPD chief. So, Martine, if you ever watch this and you remember me, hats off, salute. I hope you retire with your pension. God bless. So how did I get to the auto crime division? I was always a car guy. I made a lot of auto arrests. And by chance, I bumped into my old narcotics sergeant, who is now a sergeant in the auto crime division. So we were striking up a conversation. What are you doing now? And he goes, you should put in for auto crime. And I said, I don't know. I think I'm done with going to organized crime. He goes, no, you're a car guy. Put in for it. It was through him I was able to get that interview. Now, he couldn't get me in, but he vouched for me. And I got that interview. And let me tell you something. I worked my tail off for that interview because the guy that he didn't do the interview. It was this lieutenant who did the interview. He was our integrity control officer whose job is to monitor police corruption at the precinct or command level. And this guy was a career police academy administrative guy. He was a career, he spent a lot of time in internal affairs. He really didn't care what I knew about cars. He wanted to make sure I was squeaky clean. But at the time, I had a couple of hundred stolen car arrests. My background was fine. So that's how I got in. So yes, if not for my sergeant at the time, I wouldn't have gotten that interview and I would have gotten in. But if I was a bozo, I didn't know anybody. I mean, my dad was a butcher, so I wasn't getting anywhere without that guy vouching for me. So like I said earlier, there are burnt out third-degree detectives working in busy precincts, getting hounded by their supervisors, because what people forget is when you're a detective in an NYPD precinct, you're catching everything. You might catch a homicide, you might catch a bounced check, and everything you do now is monitored downtown. So some chief logs on and sees you got a case or something gets his interest. He's on the phone with your supervisor. What's going on with this case? Well, sometimes you don't got a lead. And these guys are solving homicides, and they will retire third-grade detectives. They're not going to get promoted. There's not going to be any recognition, but the communications guy gets first grade. Wait. So as I stated last week, I got myself an Irish Wolfhound. She's a 13-week-old. Her name is Chelsea. I swore after I lost my last Windougal to cancer I would never get another dog, but here we are, and I went and complicated my life, and she's an Irish Wolfhound, and as you can see, she's very affectionate. She's almost 20 pounds in 13 weeks, and she's a beauty. So as always, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my friends in San Jose, California, the District of Columbia, District of Columbia, Bainbridge, New York, Largo, Florida, Oroville, California, and Irvington, New Jersey. If you work in law enforcement and have an interesting criminal background and would like to be a guest on the show, drop me a note on Instagram or Twitter at VicFerrari50. Type in my name. So if you enjoy the content, check out my Amazon author page and type in my name, Vic Ferrari, like the car, where you can preview all my books for free, including NYPD, Law and Disorder. Those of you at YouTube, you get to see Chelsea. Those of you that don't, So those of you that listen to my podcast on Spotify and all those other things, check me out on YouTube. You can see the dog. On YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and the like button. Thank you again for tuning in. I'll have another episode out next week.